Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Marco Dre Show, everyone. It's Thursday, December 18th, 2025. Thank you for tuning in today's show to hear all of the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Don't forget to follow the show wherever you might get your podcasts, available now on all streaming apps for your listening pleasures. And be sure to share with as many people as possible so we can make freedom common again. Hope everyone's ready for the best hour radio has to offer. Uncensored and ready to go. Let's jump right into it. What did you think about President Trump's speech yesterday evening? I felt he touched on some very important topics that concern many Americans, both on the right and the left. But right off the bat, he brought up affordability, how he inherited a mess from the Biden-Harris regime, which again is 100% true, by the way. Discussed optimism and hope for this sort of rah-rah style type speech that he had. But did he resonate with the American public? Do you feel better all of a sudden, where we are as a nation? Obviously, that's the most important question here. How do you feel about this? Now, again, if things are going so well, what was the reason for the entire speech going into 2026 then? Well, you've got the questions, I've got the answers. Let's delve right into it, shall we? One of the first things that President Trump spoke about yesterday was the success that he had with closing the southern border. And again, I agree with this completely. I think it's something extremely important that he did. But let's listen.
And after just 1 year, we have achieved more than anyone could have imagined. Starting on day one, I took immediate action to stop the invasion of our southern border. For the past 7 months, 0 illegal aliens have been allowed into our country, a feat which everyone said was absolutely impossible. Do you remember when Joe Biden said that he needed Congress to pass legislation to help close the border? He was always blaming Congress and everyone else. As it turned out, we didn't need legislation. We just needed a new president. We inherited the worst border anywhere in the world, and we quickly turned it into the strongest border in the history of our country. In other words, in a few short months, we went from worst to best. We're deporting criminals, restoring safety to our most dangerous cities. Just take a look at Washington, D.C. It's at levels of safety that we've never seen before.
He's absolutely right about this. This is one of his strongest points right here. The border. And this is obviously something he should hone in on. But he's absolutely right about this. They took a border that was really open wide up by the Biden administration. And what he was able to do with all this is phenomenal. Really, it is phenomenal that we've closed the border down. We're seeing record number deportations right now. Other things of that nature. They're going fairly well, I'd have to say. I mean, this is one of the strongest points he's got. Obviously, I agree with this. And what Biden, Harris, Mayorkas did to our southern border was complete treasonous. Now, the figures estimate anywhere between 12 to possibly 20 million illegals from 170 different countries, largely in the Middle East, South America, Africa, pouring right into our nation. Nonstop, every single day at these ports of entry, we're seeing 10,000, 5,000, 20,000 people just showing up, walking right in. Border Patrol doing nothing. I'd feel a little bit better, though, if he actually tried Alejandro Mayorkas for what he said during congressional hearings, that we actually had operational control over the southern border, which is a complete lie. But it just goes to show you this was 100% orchestrated by the Biden regime. Now, again, while I doubt no humans or drugs or weapons are crossing the southern border, the numbers are so low right now. And again, we could see right through the Biden rhetoric from this. For years, they were telling us the border's secure, the border's secure. Then again, we look at what's happening, and again, you saw it on social media as well. That border was wide open. At some points, they even opened up the border wall so people can get in easier. Trying to cut razor wire that Texas has put up, removing buoys from the Rio Grande. I mean, these types of things just show you this was 100% orchestrated by the Democrats, who did absolutely nothing to stop this, by the way. So again, I think what you're going to see as a result of this, obviously President Trump also threatening to withhold federal aid to states and cities alike that are providing comfort for illegal aliens, like in the Big Apple with Mr. Mamdani. Yep. And again, I would like to hear about the progress of the border wall, though. I know he discussed this upon taking office again. We're going to continue to build the wall. But we need a solid structure that garrisons our nation from illegal invaders. That's what we need right now. Because you can't rely on the Democrats to hold their word. In fact, they were even selling parts of the border wall that hadn't even been put up yet. That's how dedicated they are to opening this country up to the entire world. Now, one area where the Trump administration needs to improve, though, is these deportations. You know, we were promised mass deportations. He discussed this in the campaigns. But right now, we only have about roughly 300 to about 515,000 mass deportations right now by DHS, while the remainder are people that are voluntarily leaving the country. And again, we allocated roughly $30 billion for this effort. Let's get these numbers up. We need to do this. We've got the people to do it. We've got the recruitment for DHS and for ICE. Let's get these numbers up. If President Trump really wants to take the burden off supply-side economics, you start removing a couple million illegals that are here, that Biden brought in, hopefully then some, you'll start to see the housing, the energy, the food prices, they'll all start to drop. Okay, it's just simple supply and demand. So that's what we've got to focus on, folks. We need to start focusing on what we're seeing here as far as border security, getting rid of the illegal aliens, especially the ones with violent criminal records. I've said to you many times in the past, we need to make sure that we're doing it, though, with due process. We shouldn't be having this show me your papers nonsense at a Home Depot. I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that in any sense. You know, the show me your papers nonsense. This isn't East Germany. Come on. We need to start doing things the proper way. We've got the talent to do it. Let's do it. Let's figure out who's not supposed to be here. We've got roughly 45 to 50 million people that aren't supposed to be here. We have another 55 million that are here on expired visas. Let's get rid of these people that don't belong here, that are not contributing to the system. Let's get to work on that. All right, next he brought up our military capabilities. I thought this was a point of strength that he's trying to, again, project to the American people. Let's hear what he's got to say here and break it down afterwards.
Rebuilding the United States military in my first term, and with the addition we are adding right now, we have the most powerful military anywhere in the world, and it's not even close. I've restored American strength, settled 8 wars in 10 months, destroyed the Iran nuclear threat, and ended the war in Gaza, bringing for the first time in 3,000 years peace to the Middle East, and secured the release of the hostages, both living and dead.
He's right about this too, though. He has done some good things as far as removing these... for example, these threats in the world. He's done a good job with that. But the problem is, when he's talking about the recruitment, he's absolutely right about that too. Our recruitment numbers began to surge in late 2024, right after it was evident that President Trump had won. And again, these are the highest recruitment level numbers in 15 years. So now the Army alone exceeded its goal of 60,500 enlistments. They received over that threshold. And again, while our military is very strong and it's very powerful, it's important to note that the Russian missile capabilities greatly surpass everything that we have here. Now, if we're talking about on a nuclear field, we're in par with everybody. We are. We're very strong, though. Hopefully, we never have to get into that. No one should ever want that or resort to that. But the Russians have taken their missile systems, and they're next level. And again, largely because President Trump left the INF treaty back in 2019. This allowed Russia to make these massive advancements. Let's go over some of these missiles, though. I want you all to understand this. This is important to understand. They've got these Kinzhal missiles, these KH-47M2s. These are hypersonic missiles. These are very, very superior to what we have, of course. We have the Kalib missiles, these cruise missiles as well. These kind of compare to our Tomahawk missiles. And similar precision we have with the Tomahawks, but the shorter range in most variants. So theirs can travel a little bit farther than ours. Then, of course, we have the Avant-Garde Hypersonic Glide Vehicle. Again, we're lagging in this deployment as well. But this thing could move at extreme speeds. It can evade detection in many regards, and the maneuverability is superior to none here. So we've got to understand that. A lot of these things are taking place with Russia's arsenal, and we shouldn't take this lightly. And Russia also, by the way, has the Oreshnik missiles, and it just so happens, I was reading in the Associated Press earlier, Belarus has now stated that Russia has actually deployed their latest nuclear-capable Oreshnik missile. Now, these are ballistic missiles. And these are the same type of missiles that Vladimir Putin would like to give to Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. Now, these things can travel, I believe, 3,400 miles. Yeah, do we want that? I don't think we want these in our hemisphere, folks. Just thought I'd bring that up to you. We don't want that. Nobody should want this. We need to de-escalate. And, again, some of these things, these hypersonic missiles they have, travel faster than the speed of sound. That's how precise and accurate these things are. They've also got very strong nuclear capacity missiles that can go onto their Poseidon missiles and their submarines. I mean, they've got things that can really do some damage with us. This is why I was saying I don't want any type of hot war between us and Russia. That's what I'm saying. We want peace with Ukraine. We shouldn't be aiding and abetting Ukraine and threatening Russia. So I hope that makes sense here, of course. But don't underestimate the Russians. And don't underestimate their allies that they can give these weapons to. Just thought I'd share that with you. Now, again, as far as I've stopped 8 wars and there's peace in the Middle East for the first time in 3,000 years, and, of course, the war ended in Gaza, that's the first time I've heard of this. Again, I've got to call bluff on these statements. None of these conflicts, by the way, none of the 8 that he mentioned. He was talking about Cambodia versus Thailand, Armenia versus Azerbaijan, India, Pakistan, Congo versus Rwanda, Israel versus Iran, Ethiopia versus Egypt, and, of course, Israel versus Gaza. Now, while we've heard about the ceasefires taking place, let's never forget that a ceasefire is simply a pausing in the fighting. It's not an end to any type of these wars. And in each of these conflicts, no peace treaties have been signed between any of these governments. So really what we want is these governments now to sit down, after President Trump has gotten these people to meet, after a ceasefire, and hash out peace treaties to actually end these conflicts. This is why Vladimir Putin doesn't want any type of ceasefire with Ukraine. He knows that a ceasefire is simply just a pause in the fighting. And that's time for Ukraine to re-up its arms, replenish its military, replenish the number of soldiers on the ground. They don't want that. They want a peace treaty. That's why we're seeing this delay, of course, in this ending of this conflict. But not an end to any of these wars, though. And again, we're seeing fighting resuming between the Congolese and the Rwanda-backed rebels. We're seeing Cambodia and Thailand still fighting over border disputes. And Israel is still very much bombing and shelling and killing Palestinians in Gaza every single day. Again, don't forget what's happening over in the West Bank as well, this tumultuous region that we see this conflict happening between the IDF and, of course, the people that live there, and, of course, the settlers that live there. I told you before, I love that President Trump has brought these leaders together. Don't misunderstand me here. I like that he's brought these leaders together for peace talks and diplomacy. We want this. But these conflicts are far from solved, and to go out and say, well, I've created peace in all these areas, to me is just simply a little bit disingenuous. While that's the intention of President Trump, these governments have to come together and sign peace treaties before I think we can go in and say we've created peace. Just thought I'd bring that up with you. So next I want to share President Trump's remarks going forward with the economy. And this is going to be the biggest factor for President Trump. Can he actually bring the economy that's vibrant, that's working for all Americans, or is this simply going to be an economy for the corporations? This is going to be the number one issue, and this is why he had to address this yesterday. Let's take a listen.
I am bringing those high prices down and bringing them down very fast. Let's look at the facts. Under the Biden administration, car prices rose 22% and in many states 30% or more. Gasoline rose 30 to 50%. Hotel rates rose 37%. Airfares rose 31%. Now under our leadership, they are all coming down and coming down fast. Democrat politicians also sent the cost of groceries soaring, but we are solving that too. The price of a Thanksgiving turkey was down 33% compared to the Biden last year. The price of eggs is down 82% since March, and everything else is falling rapidly. And it's not done yet, but boy, are we making progress. Nobody can believe what's going on. Here are just some of the efforts that we have underway. You will see in your wallets and bank accounts in the new year. After years of record-setting falling incomes, our policies are boosting take-home pay at a historic pace. Under Biden, real wages plummeted by $3,000. Under Trump, the typical factory worker has seen a wage increase of $1,300. For construction workers, it's $1,800. For miners, we're bringing back clean, beautiful coal. It's $3,300. And for the first time in years, wages are rising much faster than inflation. Remember that. The wages, just look at it. Wages are going up much faster than inflation. How big is that?
All right. So he said a lot there. And I don't disagree with everything he said there, but I do have an issue with this statement that while the commodities like eggs and gas prices are dropping significantly, of course, unless you live in California, where I just saw this morning in parts of Los Angeles, gas actually hit $7.89 a gallon for unleaded. It was at a Chevron in California. And we talk about a dystopia. $8 a gallon for gas? Thanks to Gavin Newsom's failures in high gas taxes, reaching 90 cents per gallon. Then we have Chevron's refinery is actually packing up and leaving for greener pastures, of course. Again, I'll never understand why Californians vote for Democrats. That's another story for another time, though. Let's talk about the overall inflation. Here are the facts. From December 2024 to December 2025, inflation is up 2.35%. Now, remember, where do the numbers that Biden took us go? Remember, we've had the highest inflationary numbers under the Biden-Harris team, reaching anywhere between 25 to 30% inflation. That is a lot for 4 years, folks. That's why people couldn't believe the price of the pumps, the price of food, the price of buying a home. Again, these numbers were off the charts. So again, while things are cooling right now, right? Inflation is starting to cool. He's right about that. The prices overall are very exorbitantly much higher than they were back in 2020 when he was in office. So we got also problems, though. We still see consumer prices are rising. Again, largely as a result by tariffs and, of course, trade in general. But look at consumer polling right now and the sentiments of what people are actually saying about the pricing. 51% of Americans believe that prices will continue to worsen in 2026 and not get better. That's half the populace, folks. Of course, we hope deflation sets in, but that's not what's happening right now. People don't feel that. People don't see that happening when they go and open up their wallets. Now, again, while President Trump is correct, while nominal wages have risen, when you look at real middle-class wages adjusted for inflation, it shows only modest improvement. It doesn't really affect what's going on. So while you say, okay, well, they've improved by 3, 4, 5%. Inflation's only 2.35%. It doesn't keep up with the way things have increased so dramatically in the last 4 years. That's a big problem, of course. And again, as for working people today, more than ever, yes, President Trump is correct, but the number of people working today is that are employed as a percentage rather of working adults is well below record highs. So again, this statistic, we have more people working now than ever. That's true. But when you look at the participation labor rate, we go back to April of 2000, you have 64.7% of Americans working. It was 59.7% in September of 2025. And it ranged between 59 and 61% from 2023 to 2025. So again, we all notice unemployment has crept up now from January of 2025, 4% when Trump took office, to what it is now, 4.6% in November of this year. So again, while more people are working now than ever, and again, that's a great thing. Obviously, we want this. We're seeing unemployment slowly starting to trickle up. Again, there's many factors for this. The beginning of AI. You're seeing people getting laid off as a result of this. You're seeing companies that don't know if they want to invest or not, or business that might not be good, so they downgrade. All these things are factors for the economy ahead of us. And Trump needs to be cognizant of this, folks. Again, let's try to understand something. If the economy was improving, all right, and I believe, again, we're trying to make progress in the right direction. I believe Trump is trying to do that. But no one believed this would happen overnight, by the way. It's still most definitely not where it needs to be, though. The confidence, the consumer confidence in the economy is not where it needs to be. And there are indicators of this, too, besides polling. Why else would people go out and vote for a Zoran Mamdani in New York City? Why would they vote for an Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, or a Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey? And that insane woman from Seattle, what's her name, Katie Wilson, as mayor? Again, a devout communist just like Mamdani. Why would young people be voting in droves for communists if free market capitalism was providing opportunities and a better quality of life for them? Ask yourself that. Why would they be doing that? So we see these indicators. We see how things are changing. They're changing. We saw that close race in, I believe it was not Virginia. It was in Tennessee, wasn't it? A district that Trump won by, I believe, I think 20 points. He had a woman in this race that said she hated Nashville, and she's running in this district that she's supposed to represent. Yet 45% of the people still voted for her. Why? You have to ask yourself that. Why? Why are these radical leftists popping up, getting elected? It's because they don't see a future that's viable for them. That's what it comes down to. We need to understand this. This is what these issues are reflecting. The economy is important, of course. Yes, it is. It's probably one of the most important things anyone's going to vote on. And generally, when people are fearful of how the economy is going, they tend to vote more conservative. But in this case, if they think things are getting much worse, especially younger people who can't afford rent, who can't buy a house, who can't afford groceries or medical bills or to buy a new car, if someone's offering them free this, free that, free this, they'll take it. Because what else they have? No one on the other side's doing anything for them. So we've got to put these things in context. What are we seeing from the American people right now? We're seeing people shifting over to the left now. Because, hey, a free bus ride sounds better than just, nothing at all. We've got to start providing opportunities for people. That's what it has to come down to. And this is where the growth comes in. He mentioned in the speech as well last night that $18 trillion is being invested in the United States. Good. Where is it? We want to see it. Where are these jobs as a result of this? Who stands to benefit from this? Because again, if it's going to be more H-1B visa holders, that's not going to fly with the American public. And people are not going to forget that, by the way. So Trump has got to be very careful in these upcoming months, as we will see. All right, next I want to talk about the talk of tariffs that President Trump boasted about, the revenue increase from the tariffs. and the bonus salary that it will be giving our troops. This one was a good segment. We'll break this down as well.
Because of tariffs, along with the just passed One Big Beautiful Bill, tonight I am also proud to announce that more than 1,450,000, think of this, 1,450,000 military service members will receive a special, we call Warrior Dividend before Christmas, a Warrior Dividend. In honor of our nation's founding in 1776, we are sending every soldier $1,776. Think of that. And the checks are already on the way.
Okay. So, again, this is going to resonate well with, obviously, military members that they're getting a bonus here. This is a point of a bit of contention, though, I think. Yeah, the money gained from the tariffs, again, which are a tax, are paid for by the importing nation's companies upon arrival, right? The money goes directly to the U.S. Treasury. But it doesn't stop there. That extra money now that these imports cause the companies, where's that profit going to come from now? Well, it has to go to you, the consumer. Right? And again, while that sounds great to the average listener that we're bringing in lots of money, I think he said yesterday it was $200 billion, if I'm not mistaken, from the tariffs. You might even be saying to yourself, well, this is going to bring down the trade deficit that we've been ripped off before. We keep hearing this. We've been ripped off. They're unfair. Biden didn't do this. Bush didn't do that. We can compare it to anybody. And again, while the overall trade deficit numbers now have reached 2020 numbers, it has resulted in higher prices for you at the stores. That's the problem here. You are paying that extra 25% on imports from China or from Brazil or from Europe or the EU countries, right? 25% tariff there. Or your coffee you might get from Colombia, 25% higher. All these things add up. And while, you might not see it so much, you are paying a little bit more. We need to make sure we understand this. So let's not waste any time. Let's use China as a prime example here, since so many of our goods come from China that are imported to the United States. Here are the facts. The U.S. trade gap between China actually did shrink to the lowest it's been in more than 21 years by mid-2025. But here's the problem. The U.S. imported about $438 to $463 billion worth of goods coming from China. Here's where the trade deficit comes in. We only imported about $165 billion worth of goods from the U.S. to China. This is why we have a trade deficit. This means that still China earned roughly, $270 to $300 billion more from selling to America than the U.S. earned from selling to China. This is where the trade deficit comes from. So this means the United States buys far more from China than China buys from the U.S. That's it. That's why we have trade deficits. And again, we've had them in this country with other nations since 1934. So if we want to crush the trade deficits, we need to start producing more products here in America. We need to start being less reliant on other nations. This is what it comes down to, folks. And again, you're not going to tariff or tax your way out of this. We've got to start manufacturing here. And by the way, I noticed yesterday, President Trump didn't say anything about manufacturing or how AI might affect United States workers. I think a lot of people are very concerned about, especially the AI portion of that. But we've been promised we're going to start bringing jobs, good paying jobs back to America. Great. What type of manufacturing jobs can we look forward to seeing? Again, Trump is a showman. He can show you things. He can point to things where we're doing well. But we've got to start seeing that progress in our wallets and our bank accounts, bringing down the overall debt here for individual Americans. And again, we also want to see the national debt start to drop. What are we seeing? We're seeing it increase exorbitantly. 38.5 trillion, folks. That's a problem, and it causes concern for everybody listening right now. So again, we've got to start seeing the progress play out. And look, I understand. When Reagan took over for Jimmy Carter back in 81, it didn't just happen overnight. But Reagan slowly started implementing certain economic policies. And again, he studied economics. He started implementing these ideas, started working with the Fed. And slowly you saw that inflation start to come down. You saw the economy start opening up, which led to one of the biggest booms in the economy we've ever seen under Ronald Reagan. I think President Trump can do the same, but he's got to be smart about what he does. But we are looking at a hell of a lot of national debt that needs to start being brought down. It's my opinion, you may agree or disagree, that we need to start bringing down our spending. Otherwise, how else do we get out of this, folks? Because at some point that bubble is going to burst, and that is not going to be a good thing. And again, that affects the spending and the value of your dollar, your purchasing power, when that value of the dollar begins to drop. So overall, while I thought it was a good speech and it was well delivered, it gives us some optimism for the future. But here's the kick. If people don't start feeling good about the economy in about 3 to 4 months, you're going to see the Dems take back that house. You're going to see it. That will be the end result, because that's where the trend is going right now. Right now, people are not satisfied with what is going on. And you see it in these off-year elections that took place. So we got it. We as Republicans, we as conservatives, we need to be understanding about what is going on around us. And it doesn't matter if it's in Seattle or New York City, we've got to start seeing some changes. So, again, I was also surprised he didn't mention what's happening in Venezuela last night beyond the naval blockade. He kind of just shut it off after that. But what is the truth about what's happening in the region right now? That's another thing we need to start asking ourselves here. And by the way, Paul Craig Roberts has an article up today about that, so I want to go over that with you right now. He says here, the truth about Trump's plot against Venezuela comes out of Trump's mouth. Well, he said this just the other day. He said, Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger. And the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before. Until such time as they return to the United States of America all the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. He said this in a press conference, not a press conference. He was speaking to a reporter yesterday, and he said the same thing. He said, they've stolen oil from us. And everyone's going, what are you talking about? What's going on here? They stole oil from us? How the hell did Venezuela steal oil from us? Now, we know what President Trump's orchestrated Venezuelan crisis is all about now, though. It's all about the oil. I've said this on previous shows. I said this is the problem here. Trump is demanding that the Venezuelan government reverse its nationalization of its own assets. Again, this dates back to 1976. And turn the oil industry back over to Washington. This is what it's coming down to. This is why you see President Trump coming out in favor of Maria Corina Machado. She's the one that wants to play ball with the U.S. government and allow us to come in and take control of the oil fields. Again, so here's what happened. Here's a little backstory on this. Venezuela back in 1976 nationalized its oil industry, right? And they sit on some of the richest reserves in the world. I think it's somewhere between, just over 300 billion barrels of oil. It's a lot. So now we have the state-owned company, the Petróleos de Venezuela S.A., was created to control the oil reserves. Again, previously held in the hands of whom, might you ask? Well, it'd be Exxon, it'd be Shell, Mobil, all American companies. You see the reason why this is so important to us. Now, despite this happening, America still is the number one producer of oil in the world. Did you know that? Yeah, we are. Many people think it's Saudi Arabia, Venezuela. We are still one of the biggest producers of oil in the world right now. So now we have the second phase coming in, this nationalization under Hugo Chavez back in 2007, and he brought the remaining Orinoco oil belts projects under state control again. Now, this oil belt is the number one region in Venezuela where this oil is pumped out of. So when Trump says Venezuela stole the oil, he simply means that Venezuela nationalized these resources and that the United States was stealing from Venezuela. Now, Trump's actions against this government amounts to piracy and the attempt to now loot, plunder the country, and of course, of all of its resources. So again, it's just another example of Washington operating completely outside of international law. We have no right to form any blockade outside of Venezuela, in the sea or elsewhere. There are no UN sanctions around Venezuela. They can sell their oil to whomever they want. And again, I don't know who put President Trump up to this. He had made remarks about Maduro back in, 2020. So these plans have been set in motion for a long time. And we have to understand there. This is leading to a hot conflict in the region. We're seeing the United States blowing up speedboats that have no way of reaching our shores, yet we continue to blow them up anyway, without any type of provocation whatsoever. Simply labeling them as narco-terrorists, we simply just can't do whatever the hell we want. There are international laws at play. There's the Geneva Convention laws at play there. We even have our own War Crimes Act at play here that we're violating right now. And I mentioned this to you earlier in the segment. I said that Vladimir Putin is actually considering bringing Oreshnik missiles to Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. That could be very, very detrimental to our national security. Just so we're all clear on this, should anything happen in the region and they get those missiles there and they use them, and they can reach any target they'd like in North America. So that's a cause for concern, folks. Just thought I'd share that with you. And again, Russia's President Putin, he's unrealistic about this entire situation, that he actually thinks he can make an agreement with President Trump on Ukraine. Really? You think he can make a deal with them on Venezuela too? Again, who feeds the profits of the all-powerful America military security industrial complex? Well, I think you all can answer that. So again, while I thought yesterday he was going to talk about we're going to war with Venezuela. I thought that's what he was going to say, but he didn't come out and say that. Does that mean it will happen? It could happen. Every step we're seeing in that region is bringing us closer and closer to escalating an all-out war. Giving Maduro X number of days to leave the presidency there. Install this puppet woman who asked Benjamin Netanyahu even to invade the country so she can be the president. I mean, this is getting totally out of hand here. Why are we focused on this, though? The American people don't want this. We don't want a war with this. This will be like Iraq 2.0, except 3 times bigger and the terrain much more difficult to traverse. Do we really want to go in and try to do this? And especially if you get the help from Russia and China, this can lead to a very, very chaotic situation that we don't need. That will result in the deaths of Americans. That will put Americans on American soil at risk. We don't want this. President Trump in his speech was boasting about creating peace in the regions of the world. So we're going to go start a war in Venezuela over oil and gold and whatever other resources they might have? You've got to come to terms with this, folks. We don't want this. We shouldn't want this. And why are we getting pushed further and further into this? That's what I'm trying to understand President Trump's situation here. If he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, how are you going to go in and perform a coup inside Venezuela, shut down their airspace, remove Maduro, take the resources, loot and pillage all of that, and then say we're for peace? Again, that's not going to sit well with the American people if that happens. It's really, again, as I said to you before, it's Iraq 2.0. And look how that ended up. Look how things ended up in Syria. Look how things ended up in Libya. Or Lebanon. All these other states that we've overthrown leaders. Afghanistan. Nothing improves. Nothing gets better. They become failed states. We should not want this. If the Venezuelans want Maduro as their leader, that's up to them. We have really no say in that. But the idea we're going to come in and just overthrow Maduro and rob from the country, is absolutely absurd to me. I don't agree with that at all. And by the way, let me talk to you about what's going on with the EU. This is in Bloomberg, by the way. It says that the EU blasts Trump's attacks as outdated and urges independence. What is Ursula von der Leyen doing right now? That's what I want to know. What is she doing? I don't like any of her positions that she's taking as of late, but nonetheless, she's come out now saying that she wants to rebuke yet Trump's attacks on Europe, imploring that the continent chart its own course in a changed world. What exactly does this mean? Now, she's going on and saying we can't afford to let other worldviews of others define us. None of us should be shocked by what others say about Europe. Well, first of all, Ursula, what you've done for the EU is nothing, by the way. You've destroyed Germany's military. All of your economies are in recessions right now. You've opened up all of the borders of Europe, primarily, with the exceptions of, Slovakia, Hungary, Poland, Russia. Every other country has taken in so many people from the third world into their countries that are destroying them, both economically and socially. And what can they point to for that? Success? I don't think so. Now, von der Leyen's remarks come after a week of President Trump's castigating EU leaders as weak. And, of course, issued a new national security strategy that argued that the EU was facing civilization erasure and economic decline. He's right about the economic decline and, of course, the civilization erasure as well. Again, that is due to the fact that people aren't having enough children. You're seeing plummeting birth rates, just like you're seeing here in the United States. God, I wish you would have addressed that last night. But you are seeing the erasure of the European peoples, primarily. But not in Hungary. I'll tell you what, that Orban is on the money. And he is someone that gets it. And if everyone could have an Orban, I think we could save Europe right now. But we're not seeing that. Again, because of the EU that is, again, pushing in these open borders. And the governments alike that are destroying their own people. But that didn't stop her from saying, let me say this. It would not be the first time that assumptions about Europe were shown to be outdated. It would not be the first realization that the post-world order is changing beyond recognition. Now, she's talking about GDP here. Again, this is so ridiculous. She actually gets it wrong, too. She cited a passage noting that Europe's share of global GDP has dropped from 25% in 1990 to only 14% today. Again, what did I just tell you? They're all in recessions right now. Yet they're hell-bent on saving Ukraine for some reason. Doesn't make any sense to me. They think they're going to get rich off of military contracts? Well, they're bringing in hordes of people from the third world that aren't working? Doesn't make much sense to me, folks. She said, yet the same is true for the United States. She said, pointing out that the country's global GDP of shares has dropped from 22% to only 14% in that same time span, while China's has rapidly risen. That's incorrect, by the way. The United States global GDP is still number one. We still make up 26% of the global GDP, roughly, a $30.3 to $30.6 trillion GDP. China's is roughly 19.4 right now, or 16%. Germany's is 4% of the world GDP. Again, they're in a recession right now. But you're seeing Japan, you're seeing India coming up as these emerging countries. But let me go a step further here. The problem, and then that Ursula doesn't understand, is that China, Russia, India, all the BRICS nations, they're starting to trade amongst each other. And their economic alliance is bigger than that of the United States and the EU. We've got to call it as what it is, folks. That's what it is. So Russia doesn't need to trade with Europe anymore. In fact, they probably prefer not to. And that'll be a big deal if we're not selling Russian oil to Europe in the winter. It gets cold, just so they know. But here she goes. She says, this is not a story of an economy on one side of the Atlantic or the other. This is the story of the shift in the world economy. She added that the point I'm making is this strategy is not the cause of the disruption that Europe is facing in the world. It is a symptom of the reality of today's world. So she's saying a whole lot of nothing here. Again, this woman is, hell-bent on doing everything they can for Ukraine. They're not pleased that U.S. is beginning to cut their spending to Ukraine, even though we're allocating about $400 million in the next 2 years to Ukraine for some reason. But the EU is really scrambling to craft its own funding for Kiev. They're not very happy about this, but they want to keep this war going for God knows what reason. But it's unrealistic, again, because Ukraine has no chance of winning. And again, they're trying to craft massive trade deals, particularly with the Mercosur bloc of the South American countries. And again, it's in part to show that it can diversify away from the United States and offer credible alternatives to countries like China in the region. And she claims that this is going to be Europe's independent moment. Well, I don't know what they have to offer. Again, their economies are in recession. There's not GDP growth, but they're losing GDP, as she said. But the United States is not in that same category. They rely heavily, the NATO, the EU, rely heavily on American donorship to them. That's why this war's gone on as long as it has, because the United States stepped in and has given over roughly $300 billion to $350 billion, depending on who you ask, to Ukraine. That's why this war has been going on this entire time. Again, Ursula's behind it. You have Merz in Germany behind it, Starmer in the UK, Macron in France. But they're not coming to the reality that this war cannot be won. So they can meet in Brussels today, it doesn't matter. There's no way for this strategy for Ukraine to win this war. And again, are they just going to blow their money away? That seems to be the situation. I think we've blown a lot of money away in this war as well. We've blown over $300 billion in this conflict. And what do we get in return? Russia taking more land than they could have had a month after the conflict? How many billions of dollars could we have saved if Joe Biden and Boris Johnson allowed a peace deal a month after the conflict took place in March of 2022 to happen? It goes to show you, folks, they don't want peace. They want war. They want instability. War is good for them because it makes their military contractors a hell of a lot of money. And again, they're also major donors to the politicians themselves. That's what it comes down to. Not a shock, folks, not a shock. Let's move on to what's happening in the Middle East right now. This in the Times of Israel says 6 countries have committed to joining Trump's Board of Peace, is what officials are saying now. So now what they're doing is they're expecting the following leaders from Egypt, Qatar, the UAE, the United Kingdom, Italy, and Germany to have their leaders join President Trump on the Board of Peace that will oversee the post-management of Gaza, for officials familiar with the matter told the Times of Israel. So now they're getting these commitments. Obviously, they're prominent stakeholders inside the Middle East, and of course, Europe as well. But they're offering critical international buy-in to Trump's administration's efforts to oversee this Gaza peace plan. This is shocking to me because there is no ceasefire in place. So I think Trump has to be, again, aware that he's got to stop this conflict before we can even talk about the issue of peace. How do you have an issue of peace when you have the IDF still killing people in Palestine, Gaza rather, I won't call it Palestine, Gaza, every single day? They're supposed to be behind this made-up line in the sand, this yellow line so-called, yet they're still killing people every single day. They're supposed to allow 600 food trucks in every single day. They're not allowing that in either. At last, I knew they were bringing in somewhere between 100 and 150. We know Gaza's in complete ruins. 85% of the nation, the territory, is destroyed. You have people living in makeshift tents. People are starving. There's a lack of electricity and water and food in the region. How are we going to rebuild this if there's still fighting going on? Why hasn't President Trump addressed this with our number one ally, so-called Israel? That's the big problem. Again, what are these other countries going to guarantee when they see the exact same thing that I'm telling you right now? Anyone that wants to see it can see it, folks. I'm not making this stuff up. What is Egypt going to say? What is Qatar going to say? What about the United Arab Emirates? What are they going to say? Well, we know the UK is not going to say a damn thing about it. They want Tony Blair to be sitting on this board as some sort of governor, which is absolutely ridiculous as well. Is Meloni from Italy going to come in? Merz from Germany? I mean, again, this is all, again, ridiculous. We're supposed to have a board of peace. We're supposed to have a progress towards this peace. Yet from day one, Israel has been defying it. They didn't release Barghouti. He was the number one person they wanted released. Netanyahu, at the last minute after accepting it, said, no, I'm not going to do that. They never allowed the right amount of aid to come into the region. And while they back troops off, they're still killing people from behind this imaginary line every single day. The world sees this, folks. I can't tell you any other way. Again, I'm going to tell you the facts, not what I would like to happen. There is no peace in this region. They are still killing people every day. So while we have commitments from 6 countries, what offer does this give to the Palestinians? Now, Trump was right when he said we got the hostages back. They did. But what about the Palestinian hostages? All of them. They're being held without any type of charge to them. And what about the plan, again, that I told you, so-called that the Israeli parliament wants to now kill Palestinians that they're holding, right? Executing them. Again, without any type of charge. Now, whether that goes through or not, I don't know. But this is their plans for the Palestinians that they have in captivity. Again, I don't know how this turns out, folks. I don't see this moving forward. I view this more as just a simple ceasefire. And what did I tell you about all ceasefires? Netanyahu has never honored a ceasefire once. The war continues on. They want war with Iran. They are still bombing and killing people in Lebanon. They are still bombing and killing people in Syria. Again, I don't understand how the United States can give more money to Israel. That is defying what President Trump is doing in the region. Apparently, his administration has shown that he is upset by the fact that this is still going on. Now, it's not in the news as much because you're told, hey, there's a ceasefire, don't worry about it, everything's fine now. Hey, we're talking about a peace deal right now. Okay. But there is no peace in Gaza. There is no peace in Lebanon, or Syria, or Iraq, or in Yemen, or in Iran. They still are wanting to go to war with Iran right now. And we fund every aspect of their military. Why doesn't President Trump go in there and say, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to give you the aid. You're not going to attack Iran. You're going to stop bombing Lebanon. You're going to stop bombing inside Gaza. And we're going to push for a 2-state solution. Now, everyone's opposed to that now, especially with the heinous killings that we saw in Australia. Again, I don't know how we're going to tie all that to the Palestinians, but nonetheless, you're seeing the rhetoric already for it to deny that. So what's going to happen to the Palestinians then? Are they simply just going to be ruled over by Israel? Or this special board of peace? What's the future going to be for these people? There's going to be a stateless people living in the region? He already handed over the Golan Heights to Israel. Is he going to hand over the West Bank too? Is he going to cave to that? Only time will tell. But, I mean, this whole thing with the peace, is ridiculous. I don't know, again, I don't know if Saudi Arabia or Turkey are going to get involved in this as well. But everyone has been fairly silent on this. All the Muslim countries in the region are fairly silent on what's going on here. And again, I'm not shocked. We know that these ceasefires don't work. Again, Vladimir Putin understands these ceasefires don't work. That's why he said, no, we're going to continue right on with what we're doing. When you want to offer us peace, when you want to come to a peace treaty with us, break bread that way, then we'll sit down and we'll talk to you. Until then, we're fine with the way things are going. So yes, I want peace in the region. I'd love a border peace. I'd love people to oversee peace. But we all know what the Palestinians want. They want a country of their own. They do not want to be ruled over as some sort of colony to Israel. And will we see that? Probably not. I don't see that happening. I really don't. Oh, by the way, one good thing that Trump talked about last night, this is the last thing I'll go over today. This was actually something very positive, and he kind of brushed over this, of course. But he talked about the removal of men and women's sports. And in Just the News today, they said that the Department of Health and Human Services on Thursday announced a series of proposed regulations to now block hospitals from performing this myriad of gender-related treatments on children, again, which are, to me, a crime, I would have to say. To mutilate a body that's completely healthy is, to me, disgusting. And where is the oath that doctors are pledging that they're not going to do these types of things to people? But we still see it anyways. Now, these regulations would block surgeries. They would block puberty blockers, hormone treatments. Again, with the department that's saying now that the cause is obviously this irreversible damage, most likely infertility, impaired sexual function, diminished bone density, altered brain development, and all these other types of irreversible psychological effects that come as a result of this. Do you realize that there's so many people that have gone through these surgeries that have come back and said, I have no feeling in my genitals. Can no longer have children of my own. I was pushed into this when I was young, and I went along with it, and now I regret this. How could we give puberty blockers to minors? That's destroying their reproductive organs, destroying their hormonal processes in their bodies. How are we allowing this to happen? An adults, I suppose, can do whatever they want with their bodies. We have no say in what adults can do. I think we should push the age up beyond 18, though. After someone's undergone a lot of psychological help, of course. That's my take on it. I don't think we should just be handing out these treatments just to anyone under the sun. We have to understand these people are suffering from an illness. And just to brush over the problem and say, you know what, we're just going to give you these puberty blockers. We're going to chop this off. We'll sew this on. We'll give you this hormone or this steroid or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. I think it's going to solve the problem when it doesn't. We still know that 40 to 45% of the people that are afflicted with this illness still try to commit suicide afterwards. These people need psychological help, not surgeries. But under President Trump's leadership and call to action, the federal government now is going to do everything in its power now to stop this unsafe, irreversible, and I'll go on to say sick practice that is putting our children at risk, is what RFK Jr. has said. And by the way, he's doing a great job in charge of, obviously the HHS, but of course, make America healthy yet again. Earlier in his term, though, President Donald Trump signed an executive order directing HHS to end this practice, which has come under considerable scrutiny in recent years. And it has become the subject of this statewide ban across the nation. Absolutely right. He's absolutely right on this take. We should be seeing this, and I'm happy that we're starting to see this right now, because this has gone on for long too much. This perversion that we're putting upon children, our children, is sickening to me. Sickening that we see these things happen, folks. And this type of treatment and push towards children doing this needs to stop, folks. I think we all can agree on that, can't we? Folks, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you so much. I hope you learned a lot from the show. Hope you'll share some of these articles with the people you know, and they'll all be posted with the podcast today. Don't forget, make changes in your own life. Make changes in your own household. That's where it all begins. Make sure you're starting up the right things so you're self-sufficient. And again, make sure you share the show with some friends, too. I appreciate it when you do that. Until then, I'll see you tomorrow on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, God bless.